Welcome to the Rusted Garden Homestead. Today I'm going to walk through the garden and show you 10 vegetables, 10 plants that you can grow when you're still getting freezing temperatures. And I'll go over whether or not you should start them as seeds or as transplants and talk a little bit about each of them. Starting out with cilantro. This was cilantro that was actually planted last fall. I'm in Maryland Zone 7, so we get 20-degree nights. We get good freezing temperatures during our windows. This is cilantro. A lot of people think it's a warm weather crop. This was planted last fall, lived through the winter, and it's coming back nicely now. So cilantro, you can plant as seeds in the fall. You can plant them as seeds late winter, early spring when you still have frosts, and they do really, really well in your gardens. Coming over here, we have garlic. Garlic is a crop that can also take a freeze. You typically plant the cloves towards the end of your fall season, and often you'll see some greenery grow up through the winter. It'll handle the winter. For instance, you can see all the yellowing. Those are leaves that made it through the winter. They get beat up. As you progress towards the spring, you get all this new great green growth. So garlic is something you can plant as a clove in fall, and you can even do it early spring in a lot of areas, but it can take a frost. Okay, let's walk inside the garden. Before we go inside, this is actually my cold frame. In the back are mustard greens. All these plants grew through the winter because I had the top on them. However, I took the top off. When a light frost comes, 32 degrees, 30 degrees, 28 degrees, even a little bit lower, these plants can survive. These are mustard greens. Best planted as seeds in the fall here in Maryland Zone 7. You can do them as transplants too if you want to put them out early in the spring. Spinach is great, planted as seeds, early spring, can take a frost. Kale, I like planting it as transplants in the early spring, as seeds in the previous fall. That is all arugula right down there. I recommend only planting arugula as seeds, either in the fall or in the early spring. And leaf lettuce, you can do that as transplants or seeds, it's up to you. And that's best planted in the early spring. That won't really overwinter. A hard freeze will take the lettuce out, but it can take a light freeze, so you can start putting that out early spring. It can take a frost. So more garlic. Right back there is broccoli. You want to plant that as transplants. And this was just put in about a week or two ago. It can take a frost, spacing about a foot or two, but it grows really well as a transplant early spring. I have some cabbage over here that's about to go into the garden, but I'll show you some that I've already planted. So right here I have some transplants, and it's going to depend. It could be late winter, early spring, depending on your zone, but they can take a frost, a light frost. That's mustard greens put in as transplants. That is a kale. Those are collard greens, and right over there is a Swiss chard. So those are plants that can go into your winter, late winter garden, early spring garden. And again, they can handle the frost. And a lot of people don't realize that. You don't have to wait for the warm weather for your cool season crops. This allows you to really get planting now. Use the space before you put in your warm weather tomatoes, peppers, zucchini, squash, and really get a lot of usage out of your garden. Radishes are best planted as seeds. Don't do them as transplants. And anywhere from 1 inch to 4 inches apart, depending on the size of the radish. 2 seeds into a hole, thin them down to 1 when they get a little bit bigger. They can handle the frost too. And back there is some arugula that I planted as seeds. These are my transplants that'll be going out here, different kales, cabbages, broccoli. You can put out thyme as a transplant, oregano as a transplant. They can handle a light frost too. And this is where I put in my cabbages, about a foot apart to 2 feet apart to 3 feet apart, depending on the size. Again, I'm going to keep stressing because a lot of people, and this is for new gardeners, don't realize that you can plant crops when you're still getting that light freeze, that frost, and you can have a great garden during that period. And finally, this is my tower of leaf lettuces, all grown indoors. Different kinds, red romaine down at the bottom, black-seeded Simpson, some different red lettuces, some more Swiss chard. But lettuce is a perfect plant to start indoors, get it about 4 weeks worth of growth, and then get it outside. Now, you don't want to be planting plants into the garden when you're still getting 25-degree nights, you're still getting hard freezes. But if you're getting the occasional frost, 32 degrees, it's lasting about an hour at night, sometimes even a little bit colder, a couple hours, 28 degrees, these plants will do really well. You want to start putting them into the ground when the ground is no longer frozen. It can be worked, and you're generally getting like 45-degree nights 65-degree days. That's the perfect temperature for these plants to really take off. They don't like the heat. So you can get the cool weather crops that I went over out into the garden while you still have frosts. When you even have a little bit of a heavy freeze, you just don't want 6-8 hours of freezing temperature when you're putting your transplants out. But they can take it. Right over here are some plants that overwintered from last year. These are mostly kales. See, they do really, really well. Same down in here. These are all kales that overwintered, and I moved into this space into my garden. Hope this gives you some confidence in planting when it's still cold out. These plants will thrive and do well, and they'll finish up as you're getting out your warm weather crops like tomatoes, peppers, and cucumbers. Thanks for watching, and please subscribe to my channel.